The next topic of presentation is motor control. What is motor control? Motor mean movement in human body. Why human beings are different from plant? Because of movement quality. We are much more advanced than plant because of movement. Movement can differentiate us from plant. So how we can control over our movement? There are a complex organization system which have full control over the motor system of human body. So what are those organs? How those organs are able to control the movement of body? And the first and most important part of motor system is nervous system. Nervous system plays the most important role in controlling movements. Movement can be voluntarily or involuntary. It means our body is having a full-fledged system known as nervous system, which is regulating the motor pattern of our body. And when we talk about the movement of our body is made up of different tissues. We have cells, we have skeletal muscle, we have bones, and they all are able to move. Even we are having heart, all living system, all other vital organ, they all have property to move. And how they move? The movement of all those system is controlled by the activity of nervous system. So nervous system can produce movement in all the structure. Some system has full control over movement, and if any system has full control over its movement is known as voluntary movement. So all of our skeletal muscle, all of our skeletal musculature are having property of voluntary movement. It means, what is a voluntary movement? When you want to move, you can move. When you want to relax, you can relax. So all those tissues over which you have full control of your mind, your desire, your will, you can say this is the voluntary movement. When you want to perform movement, you can perform movement. When you want to stop movement, you can stop movement. But in some tissues of our body like liver, heart, lungs, kidney, we cannot have full control over the mobility of all those organs. But even they are moving constantly. Your heart is pumping throughout the day, 24 hours, every second of the life. It is not in your control, but they are moving. Same as your GI system, your kidney, your liver, your spleen, every tissue of your body is having a movement. And because of having a property of movement, they are able to perform its function. And their movement is also controlled by nervous system, but their movement is involuntary. Why involuntary? Because your wish is not. You cannot control that movement. If you want to stop, they cannot stop. If you want to start, they cannot start. It means that they are continuously moving or stopping by some your involuntary control. Your not again in your will. They are away from your wish and your will. Clear? So those movements which you can perform by your will, it is voluntary movement, or any movement which are not under your conscious control. The better word is conscious control. Conscious means when you want, you can start. When you want, you can stop. But those movements which are not under your conscious control, they are termed as involuntary movement. Involuntary movement may be regular, like heart is pumping, contracting and relaxing throughout the day. Your GI system is, their cilia are moving, and it is also reflex. Reflex movement is also comes under involuntary movement, because whenever there is any reflexes in our body, it is not controlled by your conscious mind, it is controlled by somewhere in the spinal cord. But all, either voluntary or involuntary, all movements are controlled by your nervous system. So let us see what is nervous system. Nervous system consists of, broadly we can classify nervous system into two categories. First is central nervous system and second is peripheral nervous system. Now, what is central nervous system? Central nervous system plays a very important role in organizing many muscles and joints in a single movement and collecting information to control movement. It means your central nervous system is the boss of whole body movement mechanism. They are having full control over your muscle, your joint, your complex movement, your single movement, and they are performing those movements, they are controlling the movement of all system of your body by getting sensory impulses from the periphery. Sensory mean information is coming from outside to your brain, and central mean your brain is responding against that information. So, how your CNS form? CNS is basically formed from the brain as well as spinal cord. If you see the complete nervous system, it consists of a brain. You can see in the diagram, it is a brain, complete brain, cerebellum, thalamus, hypothalamus, cerebellum, pons, medulla, all the structures made your brain. Then from brain, one cord like structure comes down, that is known as a spinal cord. Clear? So, CNS is made up of two important structure. You can divide in brain as well as spinal cord. So, your brain and spinal cord comes under central nervous system of your body. Brain, where brain is located? Brain occupies a skull and it is divided into three parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. This is your skull, and whole of your forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain are placed within the skull. So, this is the first component of central and first and main component of your central nervous system. And second component of central nervous system is spinal cord. It extends from base of skull to second lumbar vertebra. Your full spinal cord, you can see in the diagram, it extended from the base of skull. This is the base of skull. From here through the whole vertebra, we have around 33 vertebral bodies in our body, and all vertebral body is known as spinal column. When you talk about the vertebral body, it is made up of cervical vertebra, thoracic vertebra, lumbar vertebra, sacral vertebra and coccyx. When you are talking about the numbers, cervical is 7, thoracic is 12 vertebrae, lumbar is 5, sacrum is 5 and coccyx is 4. So, all these, when you calculate all these, they are 33 in number. But spinal cord extend from your base of the skull to only L2. It means complete one cord like structure comes down from the base of skull to the level of L2 only. And it is very clear in the diagram. You can see brain, cervical nerves from C7 to 2, spinal cord, thoracic spinal nerve, lumbar, and from base of the skull to L2 there is complete spinal cord, and each and every level nerves are originating from spinal cord. Clear? No. So, I have discussed about central nervous system. Central nervous system is made up of two things: your central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain as well as spinal cord. Brain is placed within the skull. It has forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain, and from the base of your skull to the L2, one cord like structure comes down, that is known as spinal cord. Now, we will discuss about peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, they are also known as somatic nerve system. Somatic means body. Your body has some nerve fibers and they are distributed all over the peripheral body. They are originating from the spinal cord and distributed all over your part of the body like arm, leg, abdomen, etc. etc. So, The nerve which are originating from a spinal cord and reaching to the different tissues or comes under peripheral nervous system. What is the function of peripheral nervous system? Conveying and processing conscious and unconscious sensory information, vision, pain, touch, unconsciousness, muscle tense from the head, body wall and extremities to the CNS. It means our peripheral nervous system can be divided into two types of system. One is sensory system and other is motor system. Clear? I would like to revise again, repeat again. Our peripheral nervous system, which is originating from your spinal, suppose this is your brain. This is the brain and this is spinal cord. From every spinal cord, left and right, nerves are originating from spinal cord and going to different body tissues. So when we are talking about peripheral nervous system, they are mainly two types, sensory nerves and motor nerve. What is the function of sensory nerves? Sensory nerves are basically conveying and processing conscious and unconscious sensory information, vision, pain, touch, unconscious muscle sense from head, body wall and extremities to CNS. It means कि our sensory nerves which are distributed all over the body from spinal cord, they are collecting information from the periphery and sending those sensory information regarding touch, pain, heat, cold, vibration, etc. Whatever, suppose I am touching here, even my eyes are closed, I am not hearing anything, but even with my eye closed, I am not hearing anything. If someone is touching us here, I am able to feel someone is touching in my palm. Same as if someone is putting some injury here, I can feel this palm is injured. How? Without seeing, without hearing the damaging stimuli, how our brain is aware that my palm is get injured? It is because of presence of sensory nerve in all over the body. Whenever any stimulus is applied over the body, the sensory nerves get stimulated and they transmit the information from periphery to spinal cord, and from spinal cord via spinothalamic tract it will send to the your higher center, that is CNS. This is the normal mechanism of sending peripheral information to your central system. Clear? So the main function of sensory nerve is conveying and processing conscious and unconscious. Conscious means suppose you are seeing the things, so you are getting some clues, some information from eyes also, but sometime when you are not seeing, and even if you are not seeing, you can get information. So you can see conscious information as well as unconscious information. Both information can be transferred to higher center with the help of sensory nerve present in the periphery. And the second most important part of our peripheral nerve system is motor nerve. Motor nerves are also known as efferent nerve, whereas sensory nerves are also known as afferent nerve. Afferent and efferent. Efferent nerves, they are controlling stator muscle, voluntary muscle. The main function of motor nerve is controlling the mobility of skeletal muscle. The main function of your motor nerve to control the skeletal muscle. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerve. The next important, after your central nervous system, peripheral system, there are one other system which is known as autonomic nervous system. What is the function of autonomic nervous system? Conveying and processing sensory input from visceral organ and cardiovascular system. Clear? It means we have three major nervous system. Central nervous system, second is peripheral nervous system, and third is autonomic nervous system. Central nervous system is the boss, controlling organ of whole body. Peripheral nervous system has two components, sensory and motor, and its function is receiving information from periphery and sending information of brain to the periphery. And third, especially for the skeletal muscle. But when we talk about autonomic nervous system, I have told you we have voluntary movement as well as we also are having involuntary movement in our heart, liver, lungs, kidney, and they are constantly in motion, in movement without our conscious control. And how they are moving constantly without having our conscious control? Because their mobility is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So, the main function of autonomic nervous system is conveying and processing sensory input from visceral organ. What is visceral organ? Mean viscera. All vital structure like heart, liver, lung, kidney, they comes under visceral organ. And second, motor control of involuntary and cardiac musculature and gland of viscera. It means कि ANS also has sensory as well as motor component. Autonomic nervous system also has a sensory and motor types of nerve, and via sensory nerve they collect all information from the visceral organs, or you can say involuntary organs, which are not, which mobility is not under your conscious control. And same as with the help of motor nerve, they regulate the normal mobility of the visceral organ of the body. So now come to neuromuscular control. We have discussed one component of mobility, that is nerve, but nerve cannot produce movement without muscle. Clear? So to have a complete mobility, we should have intact nerve, healthy nerve as well as healthy muscle. For efficient movement, we should have two components. One is intact nervous system, which I have discussed about in brief what is nervous system, and the second component of mobility is muscle, and we have discussed a lot about muscle. There are muscle fibers, motor unit, tapa fiber. Now here we are going to discuss how these mobility, these movement can be produced by the proper coordination of nerve and muscle, and this because of this proper coordination between nerve and muscle is known as neuromuscular control. CNS involved a coordinated action of brain and spinal cord. Central nervous system, in central nervous system, your brain is functioning properly, brain is thinking properly, brain is getting feedback from your eyes, from ear, from nose, as well as spinal cord is sending information with the help of available sensory nerves, either it is visceral or it is skeletal, because skeletal musculature as well as visceral musculature both are supplied by sensory nerve. The impulses that enter ascending tract and exit descending tract from brain is via spinal cord. Okay, so spinal cord is an intermediate organ. When you see this is brain, spinal cord, and this is peripheral nerves. So spinal cord comes in between. Spinal cord comes in between. Any information will go to brain via periphery. First it will come to spinal cord, then it will go to brain. Same as any information which should descend down via brain to periphery, it will come first to the spinal cord, then to the periphery. So spinal cord act as an intermediate organ, either descending the signal from up to down or ascending the signal from down to up. Okay, the signal which ascend mean going up. The signal which ascend from periphery, suppose if someone is applying anything here, touching me here, and my brain is, without seeing his stimulus, my brain can feel that someone is touching me near the lower leg. It means there are some nerves which are sending the information to the spinal cord, and from spinal cord the information is going to the central level, high level. Same as after interpreting that information, whether this stimulus is good for us or bad. If I feel this stimulus is not good, so I will remove my leg. So brain will order the motor nerve of that area. So motor nerve, brain will give to spinal cord will give to motor nerve, and we will respond accordingly. So any information we are getting from periphery or from visceral organ to brain, it will come first to the spinal cord, then spinal cord to brain, and any information which brain want to send to the periphery, it will come from brain to spinal cord first, then from spinal cord to specific area it will travel. The structural and functional unit of now. I have told you it is the only nerves, either sensory or motor. It is the only nerves, either sensory or motor, which are responsible for transmitting signal from one end to other end, either from down to up or from up to down. They are only sensory and motor nerve. So let us discuss something about these nerves. What are these nerves? The structural and functional unit of nervous system is neuron, which in bundle from nerve fiber and bundle of nerve fiber from nerve. Okay, we have discussed the anatomy of nerve fiber. Suppose it is a complete nerve fiber. One nerve fiber consists of many neurons. One nerve fiber is a bundle of many neurons. And these nerve fiber, you can imagine nerve fiber like a electric wire. If you cut a TS of electrical wire, you can find out many wires in a one wire. It's same as like nerve. When you see a nerve and cut a section, there will be a number of neuron within one nerve. Clear? And all electrical wire are bringing electricity. Same as all neurons are bringing some impulses. If they are motor neuron, if they are motor nerve, if it is the motor nerve, so they will bring motor signal from brain to spinal cord to the periphery. If they are sensory neuron, they will carry all nerve fiber, all neurons of nerve fiber, all neurons. I have told you one nerve fiber consists of, suppose this is nerve fiber, one nerve fiber, it consists of many neurons. It consists of many neurons. So all neurons will, if they are sensory nerve, it is sensory nerve, all sensory neuron will bring sensory signal from periphery towards brain side. If nerve represent electric wire, then the impulse conducted through the nerve will represent the electric current in wire. When you talk about the electric supply in that house wiring, what is electricity? Electricity is the flow of electron, clear? But our body is a cell, our body is made up of cell, and all cell is acting like a battery. Human body has a property of current generation. Human cell has a property of current generation. But what is the difference between current flowing in human body and current flowing in this electrical supply? The only difference is that whatever the current is flowing in that electrical wire of house supply is flow of electron. But the current which is flowing within our nerve, within our muscle, is not a flow of electron, it is the flow of ions. As we have discussed in the generation of action potential, because in resting stage there are a membrane, outside some electron, ions, inside some ion, and current flow or change of current, change of potential is because of change of ion concentration along the membrane. So the nerve impulses are carried in the form of action potential. As we have discussed, if you apply any stimulus, the ions which are present outside the membrane of nerve, they will enter within the nerve cell and they will bring those stimulus inside, and the stimulus will travel all along the nerve in form of depolarization and repolarization. So I have told you nerves are basically two types, sensory nerve or motor nerve. Nerves are the basic functional unit of, neurons are the functional unit of nerve, okay. So sensory nerve conducted by sensory nerve from periphery, skin, tendon, muscle, joint and special sense organ to CNS, clear. Sensory nerve carries impulses from different body tissues ranging from skin, fascia, bursa, ligament, tendon, cartilage, joint. All tissues are highly innervated by sensory nerve, and whenever you will apply any kind of stimulus over these tissue, the nerves which are present in these tissues will be stimulated, activated, and action potential will be generated in those nerve, sensory nerve, and they will conduct that action potential towards the spinal cord side as well as to a more higher center, that is CNS. Clear? And the second is motor nerve, conducted by motor nerve from CNS to periphery. It means one nerve which is coming down from CNS to spinal cord to your periphery, they are known as motor nerve, and they are conveying signal of message of spinal cord or brain, that they are mainly CNS. So the main function of motor nerve is conveying message of CNS to the periphery. For example, suppose if I want to move my fingers, clear? So if I want to move my finger, my brain thinks I want to move, clear? So signal will be transferred from brain to spinal cord and from spinal cord to motor nerve, which is supplying these finger muscle. So the motor nerve will be activated and I can be able to stimulate, I can be able to contract the flexor of my finger and I will be able to make fist. Same as when I am putting my hand here and someone is applying any noxious stimulus, noxious means any damaging stimulus, any painful stimulus, I will remove my hand. How? Without even I am not seeing this side and someone is applying pin over my palm, and without seeing the damaging stimulus, I immediately remove my hand. It is because of presence of sensory nerve which inform our spinal cord, that is CNS, about the damaging stimuli. So I can withdraw my hand from there. So motor nerve and sensory nerve, they are the main two components of peripheral nervous system as well as autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system has two components, sensory and motor, same as peripheral nervous system has two components, two structures, sensory and motor, but the main difference between CNS and PNS, CNS is mainly responsible for the mobility of our visceral organ and cardiac system. ANS is mainly responsible for our visceral organs, that is heart, liver, lung, kidney, same as your PNS is responsible for mobility of your skeletal musculature system. So they are mainly two systems of ANS, that is autonomic nervous system as well as peripheral system. Mainly they are sensory and motor. Sensory are responsible for sending peripheral information to central nervous system, and motor are responsible for sending central nervous system information to the peripheral nervous system. So these sensory or motor nerve can be excitatory or inhibitory. What is excitatory? Facilitate the movement. Inhibitory mean inhibit the movement, because these two nerves, these sensory nerve or motor nerve, they are mainly responsible for conducting or performing or stopping the movement. So when you will apply any excitatory input over these nerves, if you apply any excitatory mean facilitate the phenomena. When you apply any excitatory input over motor nerve will excite and causes muscle contraction. When our CNS or central nervous system will apply any inhibitory stimulus, inhibitory input over motor nerve, they will cause cessation of contraction. It means the activity of both nerve could be excitatory or it could be inhibitory, depending on the information getting from central nervous system. If central nervous system give them excitatory input, they will excite. If central nervous system give them inhibitory input, they will inhibit. It means their function is totally controlled by the function of central nervous system. Now come to motor control. I have discussed all these brief about the structure of motor control. What are those structures which are responsible for motor control? Now come to what are motor control. Any movement like walking, skipping, running, dancing, sliding, hopping, floating, melting, bursting, swing, rise, down, any movement, any type, eating, running, any activity which we are doing. Because I have told you man is totally different from any plant only because of mobility. So any mobility which we are doing either for recreational event, either for our normal activity of daily life, even for mobility, for any purpose, if we are changing the position of our body part is known as motor activity. Motor activity means movement. Movement produced in your even at sleeping. When we are sleeping, we are many tissues are in motion. Many tissues are moving like your heart. Your heart is contracting and relaxing. So when your muscle is changing its position, what is movement? Change in position. What is movement? Change is in position. So even when we are sleeping, we are thinking we are not doing any mobility, but our different tissues are moving, like your lungs is compressing and expanding. Compress, expand. Same as your heart is pumping. So by doing this type of mobility, even during sleeping, your body is in movement. When you are running, when you are walking, jumping, your body is in movement. So let us discuss what is movement control. What is motor control? Movement, what is movement? Movement indicate behavioral characteristic of a specific limb or a combination of limb that are component part of an action or motor skill. Now the topic of our concern is not the mobility of involuntary structure. We are going to discuss in detail about the motor control pattern of voluntary movement. It is mainly skeletal movement, because in sports, being an sports trainer, being an physical educator, we are not going to focus on the mobility of heart, liver, lung, but our main concern is the movement pattern of our musculoskeletal system. So what is musculoskeletal? What is movement of musculoskeletal system? Movement indicate behavioral characteristic of a specific limb or a combination of limb that are component of an action or motor skill. What is motor control? What is motor control? The field of motor control is directed at the studying the nature of movement and how that movement is controlled. Motor control is the ability to regulate the direct mechanism essential to movement. What is motor control? It is ability to regulate or direct the mechanism. I have told you the motor, we are seeing we are moving, but it is not a simple process. It is a complex process. When we are moving, many bodily structures are walking. Your bone is moving, you are using leverage principle, your muscle is contracting and releasing, your heart is pumping, your lungs are working. So mobility required a combined and coordinated movement of many of your body system. So it is a complex procedure. So let us understand what is the motor control. How can we have control over the mobility, and how can we make our mobility efficient? How can we move properly? How can we maintain the motor control? And being a physical educator, why should we study motor control? Being a physical educator, we are physiotherapists, we are also known as applied motor control physiologist. It is said by Brooks in 1986 that being a physical educator or physiotherapist or occupational therapist, we are applied motor control physiologist. It means being a physiotherapist or physical trainer, we are going to deal with the applied mechanics of movement. Clear? So their therapeutic, so being a physical educator, we should make a therapeutic strategies to improve the quality and quantity of posture and movement essential for different function and sport. Okay, when you are performing any motor activity efficiently, you can improve performance, but if you are not controlling different parameters, different components of motor control, the motor activity will be useless and you cannot perform better. So thus understanding motor control and specifically the nature and control of movement is critical to clinical practice. So being an physical educator, we should have a complete comprehension, different component, how we are going to produce movement, how we can perform better movement, how we can have better control of movement, in which movement we require more stability, in which movement we require more mobility. So by having complete comprehension of different component and different structures, different system which are responsible for motor control is a requisite for, it is must for a physical educator. Now come to motor control. What is motor control? Motor control is a complex phenomena. It is a engineering. Motor control include engineering, physiology, education as well as psychology. Okay. When you are talking about motor control, it is not a simple matter of muscle and nerve and bone. Movement is not a simple matter of muscle, bone and nerve. It is a complex phenomena in which engineering, you need some knowledge of engineering, you need complete knowledge of muscle, bone and nerve physiology, you need some important aspect of education, how can you educate a person for having better control over motor, as well as should know the psychological aspect of person, because psychological component also affect the motor performance of an individual. So there are the 4 major branches which can affect the mobility of person. Basically they are engineering, education, psychology and physiology. Apart from these 4 major branches, there are a lot of factors which can affect the mobility or movement or motor control of a person. They are mainly human factors, education psychology, physical education, cognitive psychology, sensation perception, psychopsychology and exercise physiology. These all factor has some influence over the motor control. Now come to nature and component of motor control. What are the important components which can affect the motor control? We have discussed the structure which are responsible for motor control. We have discussed the area factors which can affect the motor control. Now we are going to discuss about nature and component of motor control. Movement emerges from interaction of 3 factors. How your movement pattern can be affected, how you can have control, how your motor activity can be affected. They are mainly 3 factors. First is individual factor, by the person who is going to perform in movement, who is performing some movement. So the movement pattern is affected on himself only. Second factor is the task, which type of task he is doing, which type of task he is going to perform. It is also affect your motor control. Third is the environment, in which environment the person is performing the movement. Clear? So there are 3 components which can directly or indirectly affect the motor control. They are basically individual itself, the task which the individual is doing, and third is the environment in which the individual is doing the movement. So first we will discuss about the individual factor, that this individual generate movement to meet the demands of task being performed within a specific environment. The individual capacity to meet interacting tasks and environmental demands determine the person's functional capacity. So all 3 factors, individual may affect motor pattern, task, a specific type of task may affect the movement pattern, as well as the environment in which the person is performing the task may affect the motor pattern. The individual capacity to meet interacting tasks and environmental demands determine the person's functional capability. It means any person's capability, any performance is dependent on the 3 factors: individual own self, the type of task, nature of job, nature of movement he is doing, and the environment. So we will discuss about the various constraints of motor control, how these factors affect, improve or deteriorate the capability of your motor performance. They are mainly three. First thing is task. Task can be controlled, task can be affected by stability, mobility and manipulation. Individual factor, individual person is performing movement may affect the motor pattern, may affect by cognition, perception and action, and environment can be affected by regulatory and non-regulatory environment. Now we will discuss all these factors in detail and how these factors are going to affect the motor pattern behavior. So factors within the individual. So first we are going to discuss about the individual factor, the person who is going to perform the task, perform the movement. What are those factors which can affect the individual performance? First is movement and action. Okay, how action can affect the movement? Understanding the motor output from nervous system to body's effector system or muscle. It means your motor system, your muscle should be able to perform the movement. Your muscle should be strong enough, flexible enough. This is muscle. The movement pattern, motor control is dependent on the action that is by muscle. It is the muscle which is ultimately going to perform the movement. So action of any movement is dependent on the action of muscle. And second factors which affect the individual pattern of movement is perception. Perception means information, understanding about the movement, understanding about the motor behavior. So integration of sensory impression into psychologically meaningful information. It means whatever information we are getting from our sensor, and against that information we are going to perform movement. If we are able, our brain, our mind is able to understand those information properly, we will be able to perform that movement effectively. Suppose if I am going to jump this block, for suppose the length of this block is around more than 1 meter. So by I have seen my visual cues ki this is around 1 meter of length. So I should jump, my stride should be at least more than 1 meter, so I can cross the block. So if I want to cross the block, I should get information from my sensory system, either by nerve, sensory nerve, or by some visual information. And so by getting proper visual information, we can perceive that information, and after perceiving those information, we can utilize our motor system or affector system to perform that task. So the nature, the quality of any movement is dependent on two things. First is your motor system, health of your motor system, and second is your information system, sensory and motor. It means for controlling your sensory system as well as motor system, if there is any problem in perception or in action, you cannot have complete control over the motor system. And third one is movement and cognition. It include attention, motivation and emotional aspect of motor control that underlie the establishment of intent goal. It means when you are going to perform some motor activity, so these motor activity, when you are talking about individual basis, these motor activities are based on your motor system, your sensory system, your perception as well as your action. But apart from your perception, action and perception, your psychological factor like attention, motivation, emotional aspect also plays an important role in establishment of motor pattern, performing any motor activity. When you are highly motivated in game, you can perform better. When like you can heard about the sledging in by Australian team, and the last test match of Australia won Ashes test match from England, it is only because of sledging, because the one England player comment over the Australian, and because of that comment they become highly motivated and they perform the movement. How they perform? What is movement? Because their bowling was most appropriate. They bowl very well, they bat well, and they won the match. Same as these factors also affect the individual capability of performing movement. So when we talk about individual factor about motor control, there are three things: motor things, sensory thing, as well as emotional or cognitive thing. So to perform a good, to have a full control over any movement pattern, you should have a healthy muscle, you should have a healthy information system, that is sensory system, as well as should be highly motivated, or you should have a complete information about the goal, about the task. Next is task. Next component of motor control is task. What is task? The work, the movement which we are going to perform. So what is task? How our motor control can be affected in different tasks. Whenever we are going to perform any task, we, being an individual, we should focus on three aspects. First is stability, mobility, and manipulation. Suppose if I am going to lift something, first, or when I am going to produce movement over any body part, any over joint, one end should be stabilized. Like suppose if I am going to move my shoulder, one end is stabilized here and other end is moving. The second most important component of motor control is nature of task that constrain the movement. So nature of task can be three types. Nature of task can be affected by three: stability, mobility, and manipulation. So whenever we are going to perform any motor activity, the first requisite of motor activity is stability. First our motor system will stabilize the part, and when we will achieve the stability, then we will go for mobility. So the second component of performing any task is mobility. First is stability and second is mobility. Whenever we are going to perform any task, the first concern, first we will stabilize ourselves. In air, in vacuum, we cannot move our any body part because we will fall down. Same as whenever we are going to perform any specific activity, the first goal should be stabilization, and when you stabilize the part, then you move that part. Second component is mobility, and third, when you achieve stability and mobility, then you should go for manipulation. Manipulation means you can perform the work, you can complete the task. First, when suppose you are going to lift something, first your feet should be stable. If your feet is in air, you cannot go for mobility. If you will try to go for mobility, you will fall down. So for completing any motor control activity, the first component of motor control activity is stability. First you will stabilize your body or part or joint. After stabilizing, then you should go for mobility of that part, and when you achieve stability and mobility both, you can go for manipulation, mean changing the, sometimes suppose when you are walking mean it is a movement pattern. When you are walking in front walking or backward walking, here both components are there, stability and mobility. Stability of one and mobility over the other. Stability here, mobility here. So having full stability and mobility, you are able to walk, and when you are able to walk, there is manipulation. It means you are manipulating your body, sometime in front, sometime in back. So manipulation is the result of achieving stability and mobility. Like the best example of achieving stability and mobility is gait. Suppose when a person is walking, when he is walking, during walking, if you analyze his walking, in one phase his one lower leg is stabilized but other is mobile. Again that one is stabilized, other is mobile. It is a combination of stability and mobility, and during stability and mobility you are manipulating your body in front or sometime back, sometime in side. Clear? So these are the three factors which can affect the movement pattern of a individual. Third is environment. Environment also plays an important role in the motor control. It is the third important component of motor control, and environment also plays an important role in motor control. Types of environment may be, it may be regulatory environment or it may be non-regulatory environment. Let us explain what is regulatory environment and what is non-regulatory environment. Regulatory environment means specify aspect of environment that shape the movement itself. Suppose if I am going to lift this mobile, so I have seen this mobile is rectangular shape structure, and the width by my eyes I am seeing the normal width of this mobile is around 3 centimeter. So I will make my finger 3 centimeter wide to lift that mobile. Clear? It means the environment is regulatory. I am getting the information from my eyes and I can regulate the motor pattern of my finger to make this grip around the width of approximately at the width of mobile. If I make the width broader, I cannot lift. Even with any force, if I apply, if any effort I am applying over mobile, I cannot lift. So when we are aware about the environment, when environment is familiar to us, we can perform motor control in better manner. We can have more control over motor behavior. But when the environment is non-regulatory, it means we are not aware about the environment. Suppose when I am walking in when I am climbing on my home stair, my house stairs, because I am used to, I am aware about my stairs. So even even in dark I can climb easily. But if I went to my friend's house and I am not aware about his stairs, in dark I cannot climb properly because of non-regulatory environment. Same as when you are getting some visual cues, some verbal cues, you can control that environment and you can perform your movement according to the information perceived by your sensory cue, visual cues. But in case of non-regulatory, it may affect the performance, but movement does not have to conform to these features. It means when the environment is non-regulatory, the motor control behavior could not affect, but because of non-regulatory environment, it means that you are not familiar with that environment. Suppose when you are playing, suddenly the follower of opposite team are hooting against you. So it may affect your motor performance. Suddenly you can see in when any match is going on in India, most probably India wins easily. But if India goes out, India is facing problem to win because is environment factor, because environment factor can affect the motor behavior of an individual. So there are three factors which can affect the motor behavior of a person, motor control. So motor control is dependent on three things: individual itself, the task, type of task the individual performing, and third is the type of environment in which the individual is performing the task. So having a complete knowledge of motor control, we can perform motor control. By having complete control over motor behavior, we can improve the performance in different sports like sprinting, like wrestling, like lifting, whatever. So when we will have full control over our motor system, we can improve our performance. How we can use these three factors, that is mainly individual, task and environment, in improving the performance in sports of an athlete. So suppose if you take individual factor, as we have discussed in individual factor, muscle, sensory nerve system and motivational effect. These three factors affect the motor control behavior of a individual. So by manipulating, by training the individual in all three domains, we can improve the performance of an individual. Same as in task, by increasing the all individual factors, as well as by training the person in a specific task, by training the person in a specific task which is in which the person is going to participate, we can increase the performance level of individual. Okay.